Hello all, my work is on naturalness evaluation for video prediction. So in this talk, I'll first introduce the problem of naturalness evaluation. Then I'll go over the database that we have developed for this purpose and our algorithm and the experiments. So before going to the evaluation of predicted videos, I'll first talk about the problem of video prediction. Video prediction refers to the problem of predicting future frames given a few past frames. That is, we are given a few past frames of a video. These frames are fed to a prediction module which predicts how the future frames would look like. This happens in pixel domain. Although video prediction had received considerable attention in the context of video compression a couple of decades back, recently it has got more attention mainly due to the success of deep learning. So because of this, few more applications of video prediction have come out. One such important application is video representation learning, where video prediction is used as an unsupervised method to learn a representation, that is, features of a video. Now, these learned features can then be used for any of the other supervised tasks or unsupervised tasks, where the amount of data available might be very less. Other applications of video prediction include robotic action planning and autonomous driving, where you want to look at what happens in the future and then plan your actions accordingly. Another interesting application of video prediction is anomaly detection, where a video prediction module is trained on natural videos, and when something abnormal happens, when this abnormal video is fed to a prediction module, the prediction goes haywire. So this is used to detect an anomaly that can happen. And as usual, the classic application of video compression is still there. And video prediction can also be used for upsampling the videos temporarily in real time. So although there's a lot of work in designing video prediction algorithms, the problem of evaluating how good the predictions are has received very little attention. This is really the focus of our work. It is important to evaluate the naturalness of predicted videos so that we can benchmark the performance of existing algorithms and also improve them in the future. There are at least two broad settings in which one can evaluate predicted videos. One is a task-specific viewing condition, where the predicted video is evaluated from the point of view of whether the given task can be performed successfully on the predicted video. So for example, if the task is to catch a ball, that is if it's a ball catching robot, then we are only concerned if the prediction model is able to accurately predict the position of the ball, the position and velocity of the ball. We are not concerned with any other things in the video. Similarly, if we look at autonomous driving, here we will be concerned only with when a pedestrian would cross a street or when the traffic signal might turn from red to green or green to red. So in these applications, we are focused on only certain locations in the video. On the other hand, there are applications which require evaluating in a task-free condition as well. And also, if we want a prediction model to be applicable across a broad range of applications, then evaluating in a task-free condition would capture most of these scenarios. So in this work, we focus on evaluating the videos in a task-free viewing condition. The best way to achieve this is through a subjective study, that's a human study. We ask the humans to rate the naturalness of a video. But the problem with this is it's very cumbersome and is not scalable. And so we would like to have an automated algorithm that is an objective measure to evaluate the naturalness of these videos. So the goal of our work is twofold. First, we want to conduct a subjective study to understand how humans would perceive naturalness of these predicted videos. Secondly, we would like to develop an objective measure, that is an algorithm that can be used to evaluate the naturalness of videos. So, although we have been talking about naturalness so far, the question arises as to what aspects should the naturalness capture. We believe naturalness involves various low-level and high-level aspects of vision. Low-level aspects include spatial and temporal quality. So the quality loss can be in the form of a blur or flickering in the videos. On the other hand, there are higher level aspects as well, such as realism of the objects, So for example, if you look at the person here in the second video at the bottom, so we see that the upper part of the person just breaks apart and starts moving aside. So this makes the video look unreal. Another aspect of naturalness is whether the happening in the video makes logical sense. And lastly, any violations in physics laws also adds to unnaturalness. So thus we can say that our definition of naturalness consists of both higher level and lower level concepts. Given the problem of evaluating predicted videos, let's see how researchers have been evaluating them. Two popular measures are mean squared error and structural similarity index. So mean squared error is a de facto measure in almost every application where we just compare the error between the ground truth video and the predicted video. Structural similarity index is a very popular image quality measure. It was published in 2004 and I think it has more than 20k citations as of now. But the problem with these measures is they are applied on a frame wise. That is, if we take a reference video and a predicted video, and for every frame we compute the mean squared error or the structural similarity, and we average the scores to get a final quality score. The other problem with this is it doesn't capture any aspects of naturalness that we defined in the previous slide, mostly the higher level aspects, because mean squared error and structural similarity index are just quality measures, so they don't capture any aspects of naturalness. Apart from these shortcomings, there is another shortcoming of these measures. So note that these metrics evaluate the videos by comparing with a fixed reference. So these metrics are applicable in scenarios where there is a fixed future trajectory. However, in several applications, future trajectory might be different than the one in reference video, but still looks plausible. So as illustrated in the figure here, if we consider a car approaching an intersection, it can go in either of the directions. Now, for example, if the model has predicted the car to be going straight, but in the reference video, the car might have taken a right turn. So yeah, there exist not only these three possibilities, the car might even just stop there or take a U-turn. So there exist a multitude of trajectories for a given path. And hence it doesn't seem appropriate to evaluate the predicted video by comparing it with one single reference video. So we would prefer to have an evaluation measure that doesn't compare the predicted video with the reference video. Apart from these classical measures to evaluate the predicted videos, there is some recent work as well. One such measure is what is called Fréchet video distance. Here, given a set of natural videos and a set of predicted videos, the features of these videos are obtained by passing them through a pre-trained deep network. To these features, a multivariate Gaussian distribution is fit, and the distance between the feature distribution of natural videos and the predicted videos gives the FVD score. So FVD can be used to evaluate a collection of videos, but it cannot be used to evaluate individual videos. So while this is the work on algorithmic front, there is limited work on subjective front. There are very few small-scale subjective studies that have been conducted to evaluate individual prediction models. However, a generic study to evaluate videos predicted by multiple video prediction models is missing. So this is important for us to develop a generic object to evaluation measure, as well as to get insights into how humans would perceive naturalness in the predicted videos. So given these challenges, our contributions are as follows. We develop IISc Video Naturalness Evaluation Database, that is the IISc Wine database. Our database consists of 300 videos generated by various video prediction models. To get accompanying human scores for these videos, we conduct a subjective study. So this in the subjective study, we have got a total of 6,000 human ratings. And using this database, we benchmark several of the existing metrics that have been used and have been proposed as a quality metrics. We also design an algorithm to evaluate the naturalness of videos. In particular, we introduced two sets of deep features. So one set of features is based on motion compensated cosine similarity in the deep feature space. The other set is based on deep features of frame differences. And we show that our features are very useful in naturalness prediction, and we are able to achieve state-of-the-art performance in terms of correlation with the human scores. In the rest of this presentation, I will talk about the database, the algorithm, and the experiments. So I'll now talk about how we designed our database. So we pick one video from any of the popular video databases, and then we apply an appropriate video prediction model on that video to obtain a predicted video. So in this way, we obtain a large number of predicted videos. And then we group these videos into different categories based on the distortions observed in them. And from each of this group, we obtain a representative set that spans different levels of the distortions. So I'll now talk about different type of video contents that is there in our database and video prediction models that we have used. So our database contains videos with variety of contents. Broadly, we can group them into four groups such as sports, vehicles, human actions, and robotic arm interactions. One example for each of the kind is shown in the videos here. Among the video prediction models, we can broadly group them into two types, deterministic and stochastic. So, as I said earlier, for a given past, there may exist a multitude of future trajectories. The deterministic models are trained to predict only one trajectory among the multiple trajectories. On the other hand, stochastic models model the uncertainty as a probability distribution and predict the future by sampling from this distribution. Thus, by sampling multiple times, we can get multiple futures for a single past. So using different combinations of the content and the prediction models and the curation that I described in the previous slide, we arrive at a total of 300 videos. So to run some experiments where we want to know if the subjects have been consistent in rating the naturalness, we also include 30 natural videos. That is, these videos are not the output of any prediction model. Our videos span 4 different resolutions starting from 64 x 64 to 320 x 240. These videos are of length 20 frames. So here are some distortions that appear usually in the predicted videos. So blurring of frames is one prominent distortion present as shown in the first video here. This is mainly observed in the models trained using mean squared error loss function. The reason is that because of uncertainty of the future, the model tries to predict an average of all the possible trajectories. So this leads to blurring of the frames. Along with mean squared error, adversarial loss functions have also been used. So adversarial loss function is nothing but a neural network in the form of a loss function, where one neural network is trying to predict the output video. The other neural network is trained to classify between video as a predicted video or a natural video. So the goal of our first network is to fool the second network. So that is, it has to generate the videos which look natural to the second network. So the idea is that when the both networks are trained, the first network will be producing almost natural looking videos. While this adversarial loss leads to reduce in blur, it causes some different kinds of distortions such as splitting of objects or deformation in objects or disappearance of objects. So all these kinds of distortions, we term them as shape distortion. One example is shown in the second video here. Apart from these two distortions, we also observe other distortions such as disappearance of objects or change in color of objects. So for example, in the third video, if you see here, the robotic arm disappears after a few frames. And in the fourth video, the color of the shirt of the person just mysteriously changes from black to white. but most of these kinds of distortions occur less frequently in among the predicted videos, and hence they are less in number in our database. Also note that most of these distortions are localized to moving regions. So there is very less distortions in static regions. So now that we have the videos for our database, to get accompanying human scores for each of these videos, we conduct a subjective study. The interface we use for the study is shown here. So we play the video that has to be evaluated on the right, and there is a rating bar at the bottom using which the subject can record the score. However, the videos in our database are of different resolutions, spanning from 64 cross 64 to 320 cross 240. So this might introduce a resolution bias in rating these videos. So to avoid this, we employ a double stimulus study where we show a natural video of a similar content but at the same resolution as of this evaluation video. We instruct the subject to rate the naturalness of the evaluation video, assuming that a natural video corresponds to a score of 100. We have conducted this study within IISc in our lab, wherein 50 subjects participated, rating 120 videos in 2 sessions. So finally, we get 20 ratings per video and a total of 6,000 ratings. So from around 20 ratings that we obtain for each video, we compute the average of scores, and this gives us a mean opinion score per video. So now that we have the human scores, let's see some important observations on how humans perceive naturalness in the predicted videos. First, we wanted to check if the subjects were consistent in evaluating the naturalness of videos. For this purpose, we divided the population of subjects into 2 halves and computed the mean opinion score in each half of the population. So the first figure here shows a scatter plot between the MOS scores from both halves of the population. We see that the subjects are fairly consistent here, and also we obtain a correlation of around 0.9. So we can conclude that the subjects have been fairly consistent in evaluating naturalness. Now we wanted to check how the subjects perceived various sources of unnaturalness. As noted earlier, blur and shape distortions are the 2 prominent distortions that are present in our database. So from the figure in the middle, we observe that both of these distortions have similar MOS scores. So I said earlier that usually adversarial loss functions are used to reduce blur, but they introduce different kinds of distortions which are shape distortions. Because both these kinds of distortions have similar MOS scores, this tells us that shape distortions are also almost as equally annoying as blur. Next, we wanted to check if a certain type of models are better at generating natural videos. So as noted earlier, deterministic models predict only one trajectory for a given path, while stochastic models model the future or the uncertainty as a probability distribution and predict a future trajectory by sampling from this probability distribution. So we observe that the MOS scores for the videos predicted using stochastic models are on average higher than the MOS scores that have been predicted by deterministic models. So we can conclude that stochastic models are able to generate more natural looking videos. This is perhaps inherently tied to the way stochastic models model the uncertainty of the future. Okay, now that we have our database, I'll talk about the model we have proposed for evaluating the naturalness. So for a given video, we obtain 2 sets of deep features. To capture the distortions present in predicted frames, so even though we may not be able to use a reference video, that is because of the uncertainty of the future, we can still use the input frames that have been fed to the prediction model. So if you recall, when getting a predicted video, we give some input frames to the prediction model, which the model uses those frames to predict the future frames. So we can use the information in some of these input frames to compare to capture the distortions that are present in the predicted frames. So this is the key idea behind motion compensated cosine similarity features, where we compute the similarity between the features of input frames and predicted frames subject to motion compensation. Also, as I noted earlier, most of the distortions are localized to moving regions. In particular, object shapes get distorted in the moving regions. We capture these distortions using deep features of frame differences. The reason is that when we take frame differences, all the static regions will get subtracted out and we are left with only moving regions, which contains most of the shape distortions. And then finally, when we get these two features, we just regress it on the human scores that we have to get the naturalness score. In the next couple of slides, I will talk in detail about these two features. So the main idea behind motion compensated cosine similarity features, as I said earlier, is that we can capture the distortions present in the predicted frames by comparing it with the information that is available in some of the input frames. But because this is a video and there might be some motion from one of the input frames to the predicted frames, we apply motion compensation here. So motion compensation is about estimating the motion vector. That is, suppose if we look at a person here, we want to estimate where this person would have moved, and we spatially rearrange the features such that the features representing this person move back to the original place so that we can easily compare the features. So motion estimation is a old topic which had been used in video compression as well, but the difference is that here we do the motion estimation and compensation in a feature space. However, in video compression, it used to be done in the pixel space. So to estimate the motion of an object, say at location I, j, in input frame, we search for the features of the predicted frames which best match with the features of the context frames at location I, j. So for example, in this video, the features here match best with the features of the predicted frame at this location. So this gives us a motion vector. Using this motion vectors, we spatially rearrange the features to get the motion compensated predicted frame features. So once we have motion compensated features, we just compute cosine similarity between the motion compensated predicted frame features and context frame features. So this cosine similarity we compute for each channel, that is, this is a spatial cosine similarity. And if the features of the deep network give us a k channel features, we'll have a k length motion compensated cosine similarity feature vector. So by computing this cosine similarity, suppose if there are any distortions in the predicted frames, that would lead to a decrease in this cosine similarity value, and that would actually help us to capture the naturalness loss. So the diagram here shows how we compute rescale frame difference features. So as I said earlier, object shapes get distorted in moving regions. Now to capture these moving regions, we can take frame differences of videos. So at the bottom, we show an example of a predicted video as well as how a frame difference video would look like. So as you can see here, all the static background has been subtracted out and only moving regions are captured. So in this video, half of the body of the person slowly disappears from the video. That is easily captured when we look at the frame difference video. And also these frame difference videos, they look very similar to sketch images. And resonate features have been used for sketch image classification. Motivated from that, we use deep features of these frame differences. However, the pre-trained models that we use to get the deep features, they are trained on images in the range 0 to 255, But when we take frame difference video, these images will have intensities in the range -255 to +255. So to account for that, we rescale these frame difference videos to the range 0 to 255. So in fact, the video here and the image shown here is actually a rescaled frame difference, and hence most of the subtracted regions which should appear black because of rescaling appear gray here. And then we pass these features through a deep network to obtain the deep features of these models, and we spatially average the features to get a k-dimensional RFD feature vector. So the full architecture of our model is shown here. Given a video, we extract the two features, motion compensated cosine similarity features and the rescaled frame difference features. And then we use fully connected layers to reduce the dimensionality of these features. So finally, we just concatenate the dimensionality reduced features and pass it through another fully connected layer to predict the naturalness score. We trained our model with mean squared error loss function and Adam optimizer. So coming to experiments, we conduct exhaustive comparison with several measures that exist in literature. The first set of measures we look at are classical measures, which are used for video quality assessment. So the examples are mean squared error, structural similarity index. So these are basically image quality metrics, but it's applied frame-wise to use it as a video quality measure. Estimad and VMAF are actually video quality measures. VMAF is a measure developed by Netflix to evaluate the quality of the videos. We also compare with some of the no reference image quality measures. So no reference measures refer to the measures which do not use the reference to evaluate the quality of a video or an image. So these full reference measures capture the distortions by comparing it with the reference image. In the no reference, they do not use any reference image, but a prior information is used to capture the distortions. So BRISC and Nike are image measures, and video blinds is a video measure. We have also compared with some measures which are based on deep features. These measures are increasingly being used to evaluate video prediction models. So these include mean squared error and cosine similarity in the deep feature space. We also present a simple baseline by regressing resonate features on human scores. So coming to our model, note that our features, that is the motion compensated cosine similarity features and rescaled frame difference features. This can be computed on any set of deep features. For our experiments here, we use deep features from popular object classification networks such as ResNet, VGG, and Inception features. So we conduct all the experiments on our IISc video naturalness evaluation database. Since many of these measures require training on human scores, we divide our dataset into 80% and 20% splits of train and test sets. We evaluate the measures on the test set and repeat this on 100 random splits and report the median scores that we observe across the 100 splits. So we employ Spearman rank order correlation coefficient or SROCC to evaluate the naturalness measures. So SROCC basically measures how well the predicted scores can preserve the rank order of naturalness when compared with the human scores. So that is given a set of subjective scores xi and a set of scores predicted by a model yi. SROCC computes the rank of each of these scores, that gives R of xi and R of yi. and then just computes Pearson correlation coefficient between these two sets of scores. So the advantage of SROCC compared with a Pearson correlation coefficient is that this doesn't require the relation to be linear. Pearson correlation coefficient usually works only for linear data. That's the disadvantage of PLCC. So we also evaluate our models naturalness measures using Pearson correlation coefficient and root mean squared error as well. So we observe the same trends across all these three measures, and since SROCC is more popular among the three, we present all our results with just SROCC alone. So here are the median scores of SROCC for different naturalness measures. We have also shown the standard deviation of these measures across the 100 splits. So we note that all our models, that is our models using VGG features, inception features and ResNet features, all these three models have outperformed all the existing models. Even our baseline has outperformed all the existing measures. In particular, our model based on ResNet 50 features achieves the best performance with least standard deviation. We can also note here that most of the measures based on deep features, they have outperformed the classical features such as SIM or STMAT, VMAF. Even VMAF by Netflix has performed relatively well. Okay. So we test the contribution of each of the individual features in our model. So our model had two sets of features. One is motion compensated cosine similarity features, and the other one is a rescaled frame difference features. So we note that rescaled frame difference features, when used alone, has outperformed motion compensated cosine similarity features. This is mainly because in the rescaled frame differences, uh, since all the static information is removed, it can focus only on the moving regions which contain the distortions. This helps it to capture the sources of unnaturalness better compared to motion compensated cosine similarity. But when we use both in conjunction, we get best performance. We also test our model how robust it is when there is very limited data. So we successfully reduced the amount of training data we used from 80% to 10% in terms of 10%. So we note that our model achieves state-of-the-art performance even with as little as 30% of the training data, and it is relatively stable compared to all the other measures that we have presented here. So this red line is a cosine similar VGG 19 cosine similarity measure. Because this is not a trainable metric, it performs the same across. It's independent of that amount of training data. So to conclude this discussion, we have developed IASC video natural evaluation database for evaluating the naturalness of predicted videos. In particular, we introduced two sets of deep features, one based on similarity in deep features and the other one based on deep features of frame differences. And we showed that our features achieve state-of-the-art performance in terms of correlation with human scores. So note that our model requires training on the human scores. So we are currently working on developing a model that doesn't require us training on human scores. That is, we are working on an unsupervised model. And also we are looking at if we can bring any of the physics models to evaluate the naturalness of these videos. And using these physics models would actually be helpful if you want to evaluate the naturalness in physics engines like graphics or games. Yeah, so that's the end of the talk. Thank you. Uh, any questions?
Um, Thanks, Nagbhushan, again for the talk. I think we should first give a round of applause to him. So if everybody can unmute themselves and just give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thanks. So are there any questions? Okay, so I just had one question about the sort of distortion metrics that you are using. So could you explain a little more about what you meant by, so you were talking about some frame difference sort of, back.
Even before this?
Yeah, even before this, right at the very start when you were introducing. Yeah, so when you were introducing distortions, you were speaking of these MSE, SSIM sort of metrics. Are they metrics or how are they?
SSM is actually image quality metric. MSE is also always used to come as a quality metric.
So what is the distribution there? The distribution is over the samples of, I mean,
no,
based on how the pixels are sampled or how?
Yeah, it's not computed in distribution space, just on between this reference video and predicted video.
Okay.
Each of the frames are represented as pixels, right?
Yeah.
It's just a difference between the pixel intensities.
Oh, I see.
So this FVD score is based on distribution of these features.
Okay.
But all other quality metrics are computed in pixel space.
I see. Okay, any other questions? I think not. So again, thanks Nagbhushan for a wonderful talk. So this concludes this network seminar discussion. We will be updating you about future talks that are going to come up. So please stay tuned to your emails to know more. Yeah. Thank you.